All right, everybody, it's Jets Patriots week. We've heard from some Jets people, but what about the other side? Let's go behind enemy lines to learn a little bit more about this New England Patriots team, and do they want to win this game? We'll find out. Let's go.
Zoinks! It is unequivocally the Super Bowl for New York Jet fans.
Field Yates, baby. Field Gosh darn Yates. Let's bring him on the show.
Come on, people. Connor Rogers is joining the show. What's up, Connor? But Trevor Gosh darn Sycamore, baby, for me, personally, my favorite New York Jet of all time.
Wow, it's great to be on. What an intro that was right there.
Paul, nobody does an intro like you, man.
Paul, you give the best intro of literally any podcast that I've ever been.
I'm gonna lose my gosh darn bananas.
Good morning, everybody. Paul Esdin Jr., a.k.a. Boy Green. I'm the New York Jets digital reporter for HeavyGashDarn.com, and I didn't think I'd be quoting William Shakespeare this morning, but to win this game or to not win this game? That is the question that the New York Jets and New England Patriots fans are asking themselves seemingly on a daily basis. And of course, then there's the rivalry involved in the 15-game losing streak and all that jazz. So to try to figure out what in God's green earth is going on here, we bring in New England Patriots beat reporter and analyst Taylor Kyles. It's been a long time since we had him on the show, way back in week 3. A few things have changed. Let's bring him in. Good morning, Taylor.
What's going on, brother? Yeah, I was just saved by the bell. I was downstairs making myself a little cup of joe and realized my oven clock is like 4 minutes slow, but I am here. I'm excited to be talking to you, Paul. Good morning, brother. Thank you so much for having me back on.
Yeah, so I guess let's start there. Well, actually, let's start a few other places. We'll work our way back there. Is this Bill Belichick's last game?
That's tough, man. Honestly, at this point, I'm hoping not. If you had asked me like 2 months, month and a half ago, I would have said, hell yeah. It's unfortunate given his history and everything, but really where they were at, especially offensively, like it was just embarrassing. It was really not good. They had a streak of, I think it was 3 or 4 games where they were like setting history because the defense was dominating, not allowing touchdowns, and the offense just could not put points on the board to save their lives. So, but since then, I really think since they went to Bailey Zappi, the offense has shown a little bit more life. His first couple starts are pretty rough. Then they got the upset win in Denver, and that kind of reinvigorated the team a little bit. And the defense has really fought throughout the season, but the offense, again, started to pick it up a little bit more. They're still struggling. They have so many injuries on both sides of the ball, but really the offense. I mean, they don't have their top running back, their top wide receiver, their top tight end, their top left tackle, their top left guard. Like it's been brutal. As bad as they were to start when these teams last played, they are even worse now in terms of injuries. But, they've shown a lot of resiliency and buy-in. They're fighting hard for Bill Belichick, and it's something you got to admire. So Bill Belichick, the coach, I would like to see him back, but then you have to look at the track record in the past, 5-6 years of Belichick, the general manager, and that's where things get a little bit sticky because the offense has been putrid since Brady's last season, and a lot of that falls on his shoulders.
Now, I'm curious because obviously, so he's been the overall honcho running the whole shop, as you indicated, for quite some time. So now I wonder that there have been people outside the organization that do shows, and they've said, well, here's what can happen. Belichick stays as the head coach, but hey, here's this new guy, slap on the cheeks. He's going to be the GM. You guys work together. Is that possible? I mean, he's done it the whole way, the whole time. Now they're going to be like, hey, cool, the head coach stuff is great, but hey, this new guy's going to take half your job. Is that cool? Is that copacetic? Is that even possible?
Yeah, I mean, Belichick is a guy, when you have that much success, you got to have some kind of ego. And I don't know that he's going to walk into Robert Kraft's office and be like, all right, I guess I'll take a step back. Like, it just doesn't seem realistic. Now, will he maybe hire another voice or let somebody else be more involved? Because as a defensive mind and a defensive talent evaluator, It's fantastic. I mean, look at their cornerback room, first of all. Like, J.C. Jackson, they brought him back. He did struggle, but he brought some level of stability in terms of being a warm body, to be totally honest. But, I mean, they got Alex Austin, who had a fantastic interception for them last week. And you have Anthony Jennings, Jelani Tabai, Christian Barmore, all having breakout seasons. Jabril Peppers, like all over the defensive side of the ball. There's guys that you really didn't expect a ton from this season who have really stepped up and made this a top 10 defense, which is mind-blowing considering they lost the two best defensive players in Christian Gonzalez and Matthew Judon. And they're just getting contributions from all over the place. They're about to be the best run defense in the past decade. And with the Jets' offensive line situation, I find it highly unlikely that that's really going to change. So, I mean, I'm even writing a piece on like how the Patriots can lose to the Jets. And one of my keys is just Anthony Jennings, give him the day off. Because he actually made his season debut against the Jets, blew up several runs, and now I think he's sixth among edge defenders in defensive stops, which is insane because he's a rotational player who was inactive for the first 2 weeks. So, again, man, you look at Belichick's defense, and he's still got it, but the offense is just – there's so little talent, the quality talent. These are still NFL players, but, I mean, they're lacking, and some of that has to do with development as well, but that part of his track record is really rough. So I just think he needs some fresh eyes to evaluate the offense. I think the first 4 rounds of the draft need to be dedicated to offense. Maybe sneak in a defensive lineman if a really good one comes in, because as Jets fans know, you can never have enough defensive linemen. But that offense needs a massive overhaul.
And let me ask you that. So is it purely a talent perspective? Is there just not enough talented dudes on the offensive side of the ball? Or does some of that blame go to Bill O'Brien and the offensive coaching staff? Or is it, hey, man, I don't have the ingredients here. I'm just working with what I got. So maybe Bill O'Brien is, absent of blame, perhaps.
Well, I will say Bill O'Brien isn't really on the cusp of what modern offenses are doing. Like, all the best offenses are fantastic at creating space. I don't know that he's great at that. I think a lot of what you see is what he's done for a long time. Maybe he'll take the offseason and try to take a step forward. But at the same time, it's not like this is an offense that's been devoid of opportunities to make plays or anything like that. There will be a third down or like 1 or 2 plays a game where you notice the spacing is too close for my liking. And I'm thinking, all right, something's got to be different here. And yes, that could be better. But at the same time, there's plenty of, like, you can look at last week where you see there's guys open. There's opportunities to make these plays, but they're not always making them. And then you also look at the development. First of all, offensive line. Adrian Clement was his first season. He's been out for, I think, a couple months now. I believe I don't want to speculate on what he has. I think I might know, but I don't want to really put that out there. Okay. But he's got a health issue, so he's been away from the team. The offensive line has been, quite frankly, really, really bad since he left. City So has actually been a bright spot at right guard. Mike Onwenu was one of their best linemen, but even he struggled. And teams just don't really respect them, so they just get blitzed like crazy. And it's just hard. Like, it doesn't matter who your offensive line is. If you're just getting pressure all the time, it's a tough thing to pick up consistently throughout the game. And then at wide receiver, Troy Brown is their coach. He's been the coach for the past 2 years. I just don't really think the development's been there. Now, Pop Douglas is like their only real playmaker, and he showed that potential in college, but his routes are super inconsistent. The details aren't there, and he's coming from Liberty. It was understood that was going to take time. But I remember even last year with Jacoby Myers, I noticed where he would take like too many extra steps at the top of routes where things just looked different, like there was more freelancing than in years prior. And I just don't think that position has been as good as they could be. Guys like Kayshon Boutte, who just has barely played at all. And when he does, he doesn't really contribute much. And you have to think, okay, maybe this is just the talent. Again, they don't have the best wide receiver core by any stretch of the imagination. It's like them and KC towards the bottom of the league. But at the same time, the development, the consistency, it hasn't been great. So I think some of it falls on the coaching staff. I think Bill O'Brien has done a really solid job. I think he would look much better if he had better players, but it's kind of just all over the place. Like, when an offense is last in the league in points per game, I don't think they've had a 100-yard rusher or receiver all year. I don't know what the stats are on that. I don't even know how to check how bad that is, but yeah, it seems almost impossible. So it's just been bad for a number of reasons. I will say, though, They are dead last in the NFL in red zone snaps. They're the only offense in the league that has fewer than 100, and they're probably going to finish the season that way.
Wow.
But they're second in the league in conversion rate in the red zone, behind the 49ers. And that's something that with their offseason program, the first day of training camp, they go out there and they start practicing in the red zone to make it harder on the offense. So that's like the one real bright spot for the offense where you're saying, okay, if they were better at actually moving the ball and getting in scoring territory, this would be a pretty good team. But, everything else has just been kind of a disaster.
Wow. I appreciate the bluntness of your response. Again, we're speaking with Taylor Kyles here, New England Patriots beat reporter and analyst here on the program. Taylor, I noticed your Christmas present never arrived, and it's okay. I will forgive you because I have a suggestion, if you may. It's a little late, but you know what? I would accept that. I'd be okay with that. Please. Hey, Onwenu, can you just let him be a free agent? You guys just not re-sign him? Is that cool?
You can have Trent Brown if you want him. Take Trent Brown because he was benched benched. He was inactive, a healthy scratch. He was battling injury for a while, but he pretty much seemed like he's given up on the team. Like the last game he played, his effort's kind of shaky. I give him the benefit of the doubt at times because the guy's like 370 pounds, he's 6'6".
Dude.
Like there's times where, like, if you miss a block quickly at that size, there's only so much you can do. Like I'm not asking you to get yourself hurt even more by trying to take some weird angle or something like that. But there were times in the last game he played where he's literally standing and watching things happen in a way where it's just like, what are you doing?
So what?
Like,
real quick on that. What'd
Mm-hmm.
you make of the report? There was a report on Twitter that came out that basically the Patriots kind of benched him on purpose so he wouldn't reach a certain playing time incentive and missed out a lot of money. Is that true? What do you make of that?
Yeah, so he got hurt. Like against the Bills in Week 7, he got rolled up on. So he was dealing with lower body injuries, and you could tell his performance took a pretty significant decline. He was their best offensive player when he was healthy. When that happened, you really saw the play go down. But then apparently he could have played more. And he just wasn't. And part of that was, I don't think the team was trying to withhold money because they restructured his contract and gave him playtime incentives where I think he could have made an extra $6 million. He didn't reach that. And I think once it became clear that he wasn't going to reach that, I think he kind of gave up. And on a team where you've got that entire defense, like I said, is fighting their tails off and everybody else is really putting in
bad luck.
Unbelievable. Right. And you've seen with the Jets, like there's been some infighting. You've seen that there's times where they haven't really played up to the standard that you would expect for how talented they are at certain spots. And when you see the Patriots fighting so hard and it's one guy who just isn't there, it's a really bad look. So yeah, I think it's been a toxic relationship for the past couple years, but I think they kind of just were fed up and said, all right, you know what, we can't do this anymore.
All right, interesting. Okay, well, yeah, because again, when I look at this team and I look at some of those pieces, especially with the potential of regime change, sometimes pieces can kind of shake loose, can kind of shake free potentially to the open market if something were to happen. That may be the source of the Onwenu, who again I don't know if the greater population knows how good and versatile this guy is. So you know what, I feel like it'd be interesting because I go back to, if I'm speaking in Patriots land, Joe Thuney. I thought he would never leave the New England Patriots, and the fact that he escaped and they got the bag from at the time a big rival of the New England Patriots and the Kansas City Chiefs. I just see, flashbacks, and I'm sure Patriots fans might too, of that potentially happening again. If you don't tag him to retain him, then what are we doing here? Because there would be no level of restriction beyond. I mean, I guess you could pick a different level of tag. There's a couple of choices, but outside of that, I mean, it could be tuning all over again potentially.
Yeah, and that's one of the big things with Belichick, the GM, is not retaining their homegrown talent. That was a staple for the Patriots in their dynasty era when they were having all their success. You develop guys, you keep them, you have a few, key free agent signings. One may make a splash, most fly under the radar, but they're really key cogs. But then like Joe Thuney, they let walk. Jacoby Myers, they let walk. Even like going back to Brady, where they didn't give him the weapons that he wanted. He was like, all right, well, I'm out of here. And you're not showing me the love that I damn well deserve. I'm piecing. So yeah, I think with Mike Onwenu and Kyle Duggar and Josh Uche, they've had down seasons, so they're in a different boat. But Mike Onwenu, he's also expressed that he wants to come back. And considering, like you said, the versatility, he's played tight end, he's played both guard spots, and he's played right tackle for them.
Ridiculous.
So I think he gets maybe like an Elton Jenkins kind of contract where the base of it is that you get paid like a top guard. If they end up keeping him at tackle, then there's incentives in there where if he has X amount of playing time at tackle, then he gets paid like one of the top tackles as well on the right side. So I think that's what's going to happen. If they let him go, I really don't know what you're doing, especially because that offensive line, like I said, City's so good. David Andrews, I don't know if he's going to be back, but they have his succession plan on the roster, and Jake Andrews, who may get the start at left guard. Cole Strange really was making strides in the last 3 weeks he played, but he had his second knee injury of the season. He had one in training camp, fought his way back. Really unfortunate, suffered one again. So he's out for the season. Don't really know what's going to go on there, when he's going to be back, what he's going to be like. And then left tackle is going to be a hole. So I think he got to draft a tackle regardless, but I think it just makes sense to keep Mike Onwenu. One, because of how good and versatile he is, and also just because of what he's meant to the team as one of the few guys who's been around there for a while. And if Andrews retires, he's literally the only veteran that you have. So.
Well, I could disagree more. I hope he absolutely leaves. That is my take. But, different strokes, different folks, I suppose. So here was the dilemma at the beginning of this week. I'm going to make this as blunt as possible, too, and I'm sure this is no surprise. Jet fans hate the New England Patriots. I mean, absolutely despise. They have not beaten the New England Patriots since 2015. I was at that game, Week 16, overtime winner, back right hash, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Eric Decker, overtime winner, chef's kiss. Beautiful, beautiful. Yep. And apparently, which I wasn't, informed until one of our, producers off screen that doesn't really exist told me that the last time the Jets beat the Patriots in Foxborough, we're talking regular season here, was the Brett Favre days back in 2008. I'm like, Jesus, it's 2023. So I was unaware of that fun fact, excluding playoff action. So it's been a while. Okay, so Jet fans want to beat the Patriots naturally. It's something that comes through, organically speaking. However, as we take a peek at the old tankathon action, I've seen some Patriots beat reporters already putting up. Here's the path to the number 2 pick of this team, and this team do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. We could get there. Like, it's a little wild. So now I ask you, do the Patriots even want to win this game? Like, Bill Belichick hates the Jets. Everyone knows that. Patriots, Jets, they hate each other. But, man, there's massive draft implications for both teams. The Jets, for their floor ceiling, I don't know what it is for the Patriots. Maybe you know. The best the Jets could hope for, if everything breaks right, is the 5th overall pick. The worst, if everything breaks wrong, is 12. So that's the range, depending on what the hell happens on Sunday. It's a 5 to 12 gap. I have no idea what it is for the Patriots, but that's how it is for the Jets. So it's a pretty big gap, depending on what happens here.
Yeah, so I think the Patriots are locked into a top 5 pick. And I'm sorry if I misspeak. It is so damn confusing with these scenarios.
I don't know. Yeah,
I got into football and journalism to get away from math, so it's tough for me. But I think it's a top 5 pick. Okay. I think the best case scenario for them is the 2nd. But I think if they lose, they're locked into a top 3 pick. So
that makes sense, right? Because of the other 4 win teams, that makes sense. Yeah,
right. So from a fan perspective, everybody wants them to lose. Obviously, I think that, sentimentally, if it is Belichick's game, especially against the team, that he hates more than any, one of the few teams where he will outwardly say that he does not like them. I think that, you want to see him go out on a high note, but also, man, top 3 pick looks good because not only are you in range to get a top quarterback, but you could also maybe, because you're probably in control of the Marvin Harrison Jr. pick if the first 2 teams get a quarterback. So then you can maybe, trade back, get some extra draft capital. So I think you want that top 3 pick, but I don't know if you saw the Mike Vrabel interview where somebody asked him about.
I did not. I just read the headline. I did not hear the clip. What did he say?
Oh, he was like, it effing sucks. He was very adamant that nobody in there is trying to lose. And former Patriot, it's the same mentality. Nobody on the Patriots wants to lose. They're not thinking about draft picks. They want to win this game, especially again because they're fighting so hard for Bill. So do the Patriots want to lose? Absolutely not. They want to go out on a high note. The Patriots fans want to lose. I think you're going to be hard pressed to find anybody who wants to risk them slipping in the draft order.
So if Belichick is out at the end of the year, is it automatic that it's Gerard Mayo? Is that 100% the plan, or would they open the search? Well, I mean, technically, I understand they have to open the search for the Rooney Rule and the entire process. They can't just say, he's our guy. So they really have to go through it, even if he is. But realistically speaking, even if they did that, is Gerard Mayo 1,000% their guy? Is he the promised son?
One, I despise the Rooney Rule. I think it is.
Oh, really? Okay.
I like the sentiment. I didn't think it is so condescending, and
Yeah.
we've seen how it can be abused and just literally waste people's time. I'm just going to put that out there. It's a stupid rule, and they need to figure out something better.
Who was that? I think it was Terrell Austin who just came out and he was like, "What the hell?" I knew I was doing a fake ass interview in the middle of the interview, and he said, "Like, it's just so insulting." So he did say that recently. I'm pretty sure
it's ridiculous, especially if you have in-house candidates who are being groomed for the position,
right?
It's
like Mayo or something in theory, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So I don't think it's guaranteed. My understanding of the situation was that they wanted to retain him. I think there was also a situation that he wanted to stay in New England for at least another year. I think he's the most no-brainer candidate. Like I asked him yesterday how he thought that his business ventures and the fact that he's got a lot of experience outside of football, but also as a former player helps him. And he mentioned he's able to communicate with different types of people. He thinks his future is in development, and that's where his calling is. And just that diversity of experience really does help in that regard. And obviously, he was one of the smartest players that Bill Belichick's ever coached. The guy was a captain in the second season. I think he was defensive rookie of the year in his first. So he's got so much credibility, so much knowledge. The preparation, players were raving about how well they were prepared for the game last week. Like Alex Austin baited Josh Allen into an interception when Josh Allen tried to bait him into a big play. So things like that where I think Gerard Mayo was the no-brainer choice, but I don't think it's a guarantee necessarily. Although, once again, I do think that he makes the most sense. I've seen Brian Flores' name floated. He makes some sense because of the success he had with them. And obviously he's killing it with the Vikings, who had one of the worst defenses last season. Josh McDaniels was out there. I don't know how that would work. I think, one, we've seen what happens when Josh McDaniels is in charge of an organization. As an offensive coordinator, maybe. But I think it's also fair to point out that his success came with Tom Brady, who was also like one of his best friends, and they had a really close relationship, and you don't know how that's going to translate, especially with the fact that there's not a ton of players on the Patriots offense, especially if David Andrews retires, who even know Josh McDaniels. I think it's going to be Kendrick Bourne and Hunter Henry if those guys come back, and then Ramondre Stevenson. But, that'd be a new quarterback, and I don't love the idea of Josh. But those are the names I've seen floated around. Mike Vrabel, of course. But, again, unless Gerard Mayo leaves, I think that creates a weird situation if you're going to bring in Vrabel when Gerard Mayo clearly is somebody that they like and wanted to retain. And, that's a weird situation. But there's a lot of people with Patriots ties. I think any one of them would probably end up being the choice. You got guys like Ben Johnson, and I know people want an offensive-minded coach.
That's what I was going to ask. That little, the zig of the zag, the time of the times right now is offensive guys. And all these guys you're mentioning, Mayo, obviously Belichick has all kinds of varied experience, but obviously, he's known for his defensive prowess. You have Mayo, you have some of these other guys that you've mentioned. I mean, Flores, right? There are all these defensive guys. The Patriots not give a flying hoot about any of that. They're just going to hire the guy, and then it doesn't matter about the label because fans seem to care about the label a lot.
Yeah, I mean, with head coaches, I think the bottom line is that you need to just be like a CEO type. You can run the team, you're well-respected, you're a good leader, you're a good communicator. Because when you look at all the best head coaches, there are people who, like a Sean McVay, DeMeco Ryans, like he's a defensive guy. That's true. One's saying, oh, no, why would you hire DeMeco Ryans? Like almost the exact same situation as Mayo, where he's a former player, highly respected. He's had success on the defensive side of the ball as a coach as well, where it's pretty much plug and play. Like, okay, it's a good assumption that you're going to have some level of success based on your history.
Right, Harbaugh is a special teams guy. Like, I mean,
exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I don't think Bill O'Brien's going anywhere either, honestly. When he came back to New England, it sounded like he was prepared to stay there for the long haul, or at least, for a few years. His family's here. So I think it would make sense for him to be retained. And again, I don't think he's been the problem. I would love to see what he can do with good pieces around him. Again, there are things that could be improved, absolutely. But they're also great in scoring territory, and that's nothing to scoff at because there's not a lot of bad offensive coordinators who are having success in the red zone on a consistent basis. Again, although limited sample size relatively for the Patriots. So I really do think that it doesn't really matter what the guy's specialty is. You need a good offensive coordinator. And then I think the point is to get a system where if that guy leaves, you have somebody who you can elevate and then can keep the train going. Will Lawing, who Bill O'Brien brought in with him, they've been together for a long time. He's a tight ends coach right now, is even helping on the offensive line. So yeah, I don't think it has to be an offensive coordinator necessarily. And I also don't know how comfortable the Crafts would be of going completely out of house because they're business philosophy, not just in football, but in general, is they really like loyalty and they like being able to retain guys and kind of create a culture where people stay and you develop there. So I think you're probably going to end up seeing more people from the Patriots tree. And defensively, I think that's a good idea because this is one of the most well-coached and well-prepared defenses in football. And I think you want as many of the people who have a hand in that this year as possible going into the future, especially if Belichick leaves, because there's going to be an obvious drop-off.
Yeah, I've been very impressed when guys like Christian Gonzalez and Matthew Judon go down. You're like, hey, boy, see you later, Patriot ship. That thing's crashing into that glacier. And the way that they've been able to overcome massive injuries like that has been really impressive. So, a couple of quickies before we get you out of here. How long have you been covering the Patriots?
Covering. So I didn't even start following football seriously until like 2011, 2012. This is my first year on the beat. And then just kind of in terms of breaking down film and stuff, I've been doing that since about 2014, I think.
Okay. So this is first year on the beat. So let me ask you, because I've always been curious. What's it like covering the Patriots and being on a Bill Belichick presser? You know, asking questions with Bill Belichick. What's that like?
Depends on the day, to be totally honest with you. Because there are days where he's just not really feeling it. And
yeah,
I don't want to say that he's rude. It's just sometimes he just is not, like, especially if you don't ask him the right question, you're just not going to get a good answer and you're just going to get the stock. Or I don't think he's given anybody like the glare or anything like really uncomfortable this season that I can remember. But at the same time, like last week or 2 weeks ago, when somebody asked him about the Broncos because of his time with them, and he just like gushed, and then they started talking about the 3-4 and all the different systems he's been in with the Giants and everything. And then I asked him about that history, and he went on. I remember I asked, and I looked over at the PR team because I felt so bad, because when he goes on his rants, it's terrible for them because they're transcribing an entire page, and I look over and they're just like, oof. But it was good. It was good stuff. So, I mean, he's really fun if you ask him the right question, because he'll give you just a level of insight that you literally can't get anywhere else. And as someone, it's my first year on the beat, it's been incredible getting those opportunities and hearing his perspective. So honestly, it's a really cool beat to be on. But I mean, it's the Patriots. It's the closest thing to the military you'll find in the NFL.
Yeah.
So it can be kind of difficult at times relative to what the job is. But yeah, man, as someone who's seen it from afar and actually been able to be there in person finally, it's been a really cool opportunity.
Yeah, the reason why I ask is that, well, because first off, it's interesting, but the second one is I'm here in Syracuse. So I covered before. Now he's no longer here. Jim Boeheim.
I went to Syracuse.
Oh, you did? I had no idea you were a Syracuse guy. Oh,
absolutely.
Well, then you know exactly. The jib I'm cutting at here is that I've been at several Jim Boeheim pressers, and I've gotten the. And thankfully not the call, not 10 bleeping games, but I've gotten a couple of nice question there, pal, and gotten a little aggressive. And I was like, oh man, you know what, Belichick, I don't know if there's a special relationship, almost like when you're in the room, you gotta have a little something, with coach, in this case Belichick or Boeheim or something,
There was one. I think my buddy Phil Perry asked him. I forget what the question was. I think it was about how involved he is as a general manager in the personnel side in season.
Oh, yeah.
And he was just trying to get the details. And it was one of those things where both sides, like I saw where both sides were coming from, but Bill was not having it. And he when he uses your name, it's kind of like when your parent says your full name. You know what I mean? And I remember I was sitting there looking around like. Is anybody else uncomfortable, trying not to laugh and also trying not to crawl out of their skin? So there was one time this season where I remember he really was just like not having it, but for the most part, nothing too crazy. But so, yeah, it's kind of Jim Boeheim me at times.
when that happens, I'm curious. There's two things that can happen. One reporter can shrink into his chair, and then it's over. Or Bud Poliquin, my former radio partner, like he would go. Instead of shrinking down the chair going, excuse me, and then they have the little tay-to-tay. They start battling in their own way of going back and forth on the viability of a question or back and forth or anything. What's a normal modus operandi there in Patriot Beatline? Is it shrink in their chair, or is there a little like, okay, Belichick, let's go, roll down the sleeve, let's go here, brother?
Yeah, man, we're in Boston. There's not a whole lot of shrinking in the chair.
Yeah,
I love this beat. Yeah, they got a lot of pros here where they will push back. It's never rude or anything like that. Yeah. It's just, no, I have a job and I'm going to do my best to try to get, whatever information I can for the fans. And I respect that. I think there's a couple of times that I've asked questions where I phrased it specifically knowing that he was going to try to get out of the question or kind of, undercut what I was saying. And it's awkward because he'll do this thing where he pauses, but he keeps talking, but it sounds like he's done. And I remember, I asked him about a couple players that hadn't played for their team. Like Jalen Ramsey. I asked him about Jalen Ramsey when he was coming off of injured reserve. So his first game was against the Patriots. And I was like, yeah, I know Ramsey hasn't played for the Dolphins yet, but what have you seen from him in recent history? Because I remember people were saying that Ramsey wasn't good anymore. And I'm looking at the film like, that's not true. He's still very good. Just wanted to get his insight on where Ramsey is at this point in his career. And I specifically phrased it saying that I know he hasn't played yet. And Bill goes, well, he hasn't played yet. He hasn't played for him. And I'm like, Bill, I just said that. And I tried to rephrase, and then he started talking, and then I was talking at the same time, and it was really awkward. But I've had a couple of those where he intentionally not tries to make you look stupid, but
I mean, that kind of, when you say something like that, it's like, what a dumbass question. He hasn't played in a while. I know, Bill, you may not have heard it.
Dude, I just said that. Exactly. And I'm like, hey man, all right, whatever. I get what you're doing. I know I didn't mess up. I feel stupid, but it is what it is. And you learn first year.
yeah, that's right. That's it. Just rookie stuff there. No problem with that. All right, Taylor, let's wrap up with this. Jets Patriots is probably we do this at the end of every guest interview we have here every day here on Boy Green Daily, but this one just feels weird. It just feels different. First, it's the last, so the Hunger Games whistle. It's over. God bless. But so there's some finality to this, but finality maybe in a greater way. This is just odd. So yeah, crystal ball. What in God's green earth is happening on Sunday?
Honestly, no offense, I just don't see how the Jets win unless the Patriots completely lay an egg. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's just because of where they're at right now. Like the offensive line, the quarterback situation.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, I would like your opinion. How is the defense playing at this point? Are they still hanging in there, or is there a little bit of bend in their defense?
Well, I mean, obviously they came in with 1985 Chicago Bears, which I shouldn't bring up for Patriot fans who may be listening. Sorry about that. I apologize. But, that was brought up in the same sentence as the Jets heading into the season. And a lot of people went, is it now? And then there's been flashes. And, of course, that puts a target on their back for everybody against Cleveland. Oh, my. A lot of the Jets defense came in there with, I don't want to say arrogance, but a little swag. Like, we've seen Joe Flacco here. Pal. I know everyone out there is saying, oh, wow, Joe Flacco. They're like, yeah, we're going to put a guy who has the mobility of a parked car. We're going to put this one in the garage, baby. We're going to give some business here. And then when Joe Flacco just barely escaped all the danger of he almost threw 2 picks, there were some almost bad plays, but once he kind of surfaced past that, Flacco carved up the Jets pretty good. David Njoku was all over the place. They did a phenomenal job in the second half, but you could also say to the Browns' point, why would they even be trying to pass or go crazy when they had such a massive lead? So I don't know what credit you could give. So they've had some holes. The week before, the 30-0, they went after DJ Reed a little bit. Tua did. They've stayed away from Sauce. So Sauce, and apparently Sauce revealed after this past game, he was going to shadow Amari Cooper Revis style, which is something they have not done straight up. They've done it sporadically, spot duty, a couple of occasions, but apparently his assignment was straight up. They were going to change everything. He was going to shadow straight up Amari. We find out last second Amari's not playing. So they have to shift back to everything else, which they said threw him off a little bit on what they were trying to do. But so Sauce has been really good. DJ's been caught a few times, but he's been really good across the whole season. But man, this defense has gotten got a few times. They've gotten Dolphins game, Browns game. Maybe it's the end of the season. Maybe it's no playoffs. DJ Reed admitted after one of the recent games, I know it's hard to stay motivated. I didn't take it as a bad comment. Some people went like, oh, how do you say that? I just felt like it was just honest. He's like,
right.
It's hard to rally the troops when now there's no more piece of meat on the treadmill, that there's the playoffs. But then he said, but of course I'm a professional and that's what we do. But he said, admittedly, it's kind of hard. So maybe that's crept into their minds a little bit now, as literally, on a week-to-week basis, there's nothing except for the name, I guess, on the back of that nameplate on the back that you're still fighting for. So they've been got a few times for whatever those reasons happen to be. They've been pretty healthy, all things considered, the last 2 years on defense, which I'm sure Patriots fans are like, no injuries over that. But yeah, they've been pretty healthy. They've had the 4-leaf clover, all things considered, outside of a handful of injuries of Chuck Clark in the preseason and a couple of other things. They've been very healthy through the whole. So the defense has been really good, but again, the offense, once the offense doesn't do anything, the defense starts either subconsciously or consciously gets frustrated, and then eventually the pressure just breaks and then they get through. I don't know if that would be the case against the New England Patriots, but the thing is, this Jets offense, if it ain't doing things against crappy defenses normally, what are they going to do against a Patriots unit that's pretty good? That's concerning. That is concerning. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure that Sauce isn't going to be shadowing anybody in this game. That's for certain.
Yeah. I was about to say, who would be on the list to shadow? Who, if he's like, all right, I'm shadowing somebody. Let me look at this roster. Okay, who we shadowing? Who's on the list? Who's the guy?
Maybe Pop, and I don't think they're going to kick him into the slot for that against a rookie. Like I don't think that's going to happen. And then like even Devontae Parker has been Bailey Zappi's guy. He barely played last week as he suffered a rib injury. And then outside, I'm genuinely having a hard time remembering even who they could possibly throw to because you're not injured reserve. Who they have? They had Jalen Reagor, Tyquan Thornton, and Devontae Parker.
Wow, those are some names.
Yeah, so I think we're going to see a similar game to week 3 where it's just field position, whatever team turns it over in, their own territory, that's probably going to decide it. The Patriots turned it over a bunch. Like it was a lot of just great defensive plays by the Bills, but also some, not great execution from the Pats, especially the receivers more even than the quarterbacks. So this is going to be a low-scoring game, man. I don't think this is going to be a fun one to watch unless you really like defense. But I think the Patriots pull it out just on the strength of their defense and because – I think they have some slight edge over the Jets offensively, but like even that's marginal. Because Bailey Zappi has played some solid football in terms of like being a backup who doesn't have a lot of experience and is playing with guys that he doesn't have a ton of time with. So I give them the slight edge because I just think Bailey Zappi is a little bit better than Trevor Siemian.
Okay. Wow. What a take. What a take. Taylor on this show. There you go. Move over.
That's the headline.
That's sad. I'm going to be honest. Before the year going, Aaron Rodgers. Wow. This is week 18. Okay. Here we go. Trevor Siemian, Bailey Zappi. All right. Here we go. It's funny because they were doing all the announcements this week, right? Like, oh, which game? Ooh, Sunday Night Football. Bills, Dolphins, AFC East on the line. And they're moving games around, moving times around. I'm just like, I know where that Jets-Patriots game's going. 1 o'clock Sunday. Breaking news. Okay. Yeah. Well, park that baby right there. Elite dad time. There you go. 1 o'clock. Very nice. All right. Excellent. Well, Taylor, it's going to be a wild off season for you, a wild off season for both of us, I'm sure. But in particular, for New England Patriots fan, we'll be looking forward to checking out all the content. There's the handle right there, everybody on the screen, Taylor. And it's been great virtually meeting you this season, man. We'll have to make this a new tradition, annually speaking.
Yes, please, right, brother. It has been an absolute pleasure. Seriously, thank you again for having me on. You were a delight. Didn't even need the coffee.
Oh, wow. Well, it's the least I could do. It's the least I could do, quite frankly. You bet, pal. Enjoy the game on Sunday, okay?
Likewise. Peace, everybody. Right. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Take care.